Okay, hi everyone. So excited because today you get to meet Deb, who's thebomb.com. Right as my kids start running upstairs and yelling. So hopefully that's not too distracting. But Deb, I was thinking about you this morning and our conversation and just thinking, I just really want to start with naming what a profound impact your teachings and presence in my life, what it has been for the past year, over a year now. And I am so honored to have your wisdom shared here with our community. You are such a gift.
Thank you, honey. It goes right back at you. So there we are.
You are a gift. I could do a whole episode on all the things you've taught me, but I'll do that on my own without you physically here, and then I won't waste your time. But I actually called you in, right? I literally was like, we need to have some conversation as a community. And there's one person I know who can do it. And it's about initiation. It's about adult development and stages, because I think that there are a lot of women in our community. We have way more women than men. We have whatever, I would say 98% women and 2% men. So I'm going to use that female language. And I'm also living that experience. I don't want to speak out of my lived experience, but where we were not taught by elders the stages, the process, initiations, grieving publicly, community grief, all of these things were really not part of my growing up in childhood and community and society. And it's so painful because now, as a middle-aged woman, there are things that I'm going through and growing through that I feel like are really normal and really natural, but weren't named, weren't normalized. And so I'm noticing in our community, people stuck in different stages. It feels as if, I don't want to name it as a judgment, but just it feels as if people are kind of stuck in some earlier stages. And what I mean by that is not embodying the power of middle-aged femalehood, which I think is just like, you helped me tap into mine. And now she's just like, on fire. It's a little much for some, but I'm loving it. But, there's this thing, and it's kind of a growth, but it's also moving towards a path of elderhood and wisdom of a lifetime. So that's what I want to start with, is like, tell me, what do you think when I say all of that? What's coming up for you? Share with us.
Well, good. Let's just talk. The first question I guess I would have is, can you name some of those pods of stuckness so we can, like, what is it that you see?
Yeah. Wanting other people to give answers, external validation, like contagious thought loops and limiting beliefs and stories that feel very trapped in a former version of them.
Yeah.
So it's almost like I see this huge potentiality, and then the reflection back is sometimes almost like an adolescent stage is what I'm hearing in my inner voice, but I don't mean that in a judgment way. I just mean in a stage where it's a little bit tantrumy and sort of like irritated about life, but not really stepping into the sort of responsibility of the choices we've made. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah. So let's go meta to micro.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So one thing that you named, which I feel really is true, is that the context that Americans, let's just work with Americans, and this is not across the board. So let's just say the Americans that I'm working with are, like you said, they're not, none of us came, unless we were in a really sincere religious faith that has this all plotted out.
Yeah.
The quality of assimilation of faith-based and initiation rituals and all of that is very fragmented. So we have some in the Wiccan community, we have some in the Christian community, Jewish communities, Hindu communities. Everybody has some. but as a assimilated population together, we don't have much, and we don't have a language for it. So I was blessed to live in Africa for 3 years, and it was really like such a big part of what happened to my understanding of human development, because they're so specific about making sure that each of those things is met. Also in Japan, very specific. Judaism, very specific, right? But even in Judaism, which you and I are familiar with, once you get past 13, you know, unless you're really working it, there's not a lot coming in.
Yeah.
So that's one piece. The second piece that I see contextually in my work all the time is, I can't call it anything else but American narcissism, which is kind of sounds harsh, but I'll include myself in it.
Yeah.
Which is just that we were, all of us, pretty much brought up in a, no, not all of us. Some of us were brought up in a boom time that allowed us to be in the position of, if you build it, they will come. Whatever you dream, you can be. You know, how many Academy Awards speeches have we heard saying, keep dreaming, you can have this too, right? Relationships, all of the stuff that we've seen on screen in American film until recently, really, the norm was not developmentally accurate, right? Everybody's movies just went right to the point of happily ever after, period. So that's, to me, is kind of the popular culture context that we live in. Within that, of course, there's so many variations.
What would be a developmentally accurate? I just, when you said that, I kind of went like, ding, ding, ding. What's that mean? So, okay.
The easiest one to do is relationships.
Okay.
Let's just follow that one through, especially.
Perfect.
So for girls, we'll just do girls. So you have, you know, your first level of development, which is attachment, which is that first year of life, from conception to first year of life. That actually wires us for love, right? That sets the template for what smells right for us, literally, like what kind of man or woman we're going to be attracted to. It's that early. And then everything developmentally after that reflects some part of either the women or the men in our lives that were our caretakers. Right. So that's created actually the kind of the ball of energy that all humans have. And like in Africa, the attachment story is very, very different because everybody's attached to the chest forever. And then once you come down off mommy's breast, you have 20 or 30 aunties. Right. So you're constantly in relationship. In America, our ideal was to put everybody in a house by themselves with mommy, daddy, or mommy, or daddy, and the kids, which does not create a social context, a natural, bigger social context. So once we get into relationships, we're aiming for a very narrow life. We're aiming for a love looks like this. The man should be like this. The conversation should sound like this. And it's devastating, actually. We have like, what, 60% divorce rate. So we're actually not doing well at that very most simple adult transition from childhood, looking at my future. I'll just do me. I want to be a mother and a wife. I also want to be a theater artist and a counselor. I didn't think that at the time, but those three things. By the time I got to 21, which is the next, you know, teenage is a special time, so we'll go back to that, but 21 will be the next initiation towards gravitas, towards wholeness. If there hasn't been a really nice, solid period of developing your soul in elementary school and high school and college, you're going to hit 21 pretty shallow. And so one of the hard parts, I think, for your generation is that you really have to work hard to get a great soul's education. Shouldn't be that hard, but you do. So when you hit 21 and it's time to either procreate or find a partner or whatever you're going to do, you're so much not an adult. And so that's where I see the first crap out, is sort of at 21. And then I watch everybody sort of fake it till 40. And then most of my clients fall apart between 40 and 50. And that really is where the next initiation should be.
Yeah.
Right? Is that we can kind of muscle through.
Yeah.
But then once the kids come and the marriage falls apart and things get harder, and there's no, if your soul hasn't been the central story of your life up to that point, then your external validation is really all that you've been trained for. So we just, that's why the work you do is so important, because you're training people, not offering people to remember that they are led by their souls.
Yeah.
Right? Which is not the cultural conversation. Like, why aren't politicians talking about their souls? Like, really would be cool.
Yeah.
So we're way behind in that way, and we're way ahead in our ability to know that we need to take care of ourselves. Like, that part of the movement towards soul came through. We all do yoga, not we all do yoga. I mean, everybody.
More mainstream meditation. Yeah.
Yeah, some information about how to take care of themselves.
But it's so often in isolation rather than community, because of apps and technology. And so people are meditating every day on the app and still feeling all the feels and empty, because because all of the other traditions have that communal aspect, right? And we haven't like bridged that. Would you agree with that? I'm sort of been just thinking about that lately. Yeah.
Oh, and that's, all the way back to nuclear families, right? It's like, oh, okay, that's what's supposed to happen. And then my partnership is supposed to be enmeshed, right? That's the ideal. And so then you have those enmeshed years from 20 to 40. And then if you have any kind of intelligence at all and longing, you're going to mess up right here, because you're going to want to differentiate. Mm-hmm. So in my work, and just in this one thread, relationship, we go from enmeshment, like that, I am you and you are me, to I am me and you are you, to we are together, mostly ourselves, and this little tiny sliver in the middle belongs to the couple, and it's very alive, but everything else belongs to me. Right? And that is not the story, the developmental story that we were taught. So marriage becomes very problematic. Yeah. And not realistic.
Is there anything from your own, you've been married for how long, how many years?
We've been married 25 years.
Okay. From your lived experience, that sort of wisdom around what does that sliver really look like in real life?
Yeah. So basically I can say this I'll just do myself. So we came together, later I've been married 3 times. I kept trying this one. So
I didn't know
we
that.
came together when I was in my late 30s. So I already had my gravitas, which helped, but it did not keep us from the stage of development that we needed to do. So we enmeshed for about 10 years. The picture of us would be completely on the same track. We taught together, traveled together, raised kids together. And then at some point, we both needed to do something else. And that developmental stage took about 15 years. And I think that's what no adult ever told us, right? It's like, it wasn't that it happened because I did a play and you wrote a book. It happened because we fought for 15, right? And we had power struggle, and we projected all over the other person what our parental dilemmas were. And, all of the horrible stuff about psychology, we did all of that. And if we hadn't had this initiation at an early age into souls together, we share a common soul language, I'd have no expectation we would have made it. So we were able to keep coming back to our soul contract and fight our way through this. And then somewhere, and this was the next initiation, around 60. Listen to the time frame I'm talking about. We became what my husband calls stones in God's pocket, right? We rubbed each other so long that we're having a renaissance, and it's just the best it's been since we were first married, right? But who told me that was, I mean, I've read about it in books, but who said it was going to be so hard?
Yeah.
Or that it would be so ugly, or that it would be messed with both of our heads so much. You know, that nobody talks about that. And if you see that in the movies, they get divorced.
Yeah.
They don't make it through.
Right.
So that to me is like, those are two initiatory steps that women actually could help each other. Older women should be invited to younger women's
Circles. Yeah.
right? And you should ask us, tell me about long marriage, right? Tell me about sex. The really interesting thing in the tribe that I was lived with in Uganda is that when you get married, they send an auntie with you to your wedding night to make sure that you learn how to do it. So there's another thread, whole developmental thing, sex, which we're crappy at. You know, we missed the initiations.
Yeah.
And so all that we're left with is penthouse and romance novels, right?
Yeah.
Educate us about sex. That's it. Am I on target, or is this what
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's so much. And I'm just thinking about so many of us in our community who, you know, when you were just talking about that infant stage in that first year and that nuclear family, and so many of us grew up in homes where that nuclear family or primary caregiver had so many of their own issues. And so, of course, those inheritances, it's like a lifetime to break through them. Because we're in those tiny containers with not well folks, not to blame and shame them, but you know, from their ancestry or their lineage or whatever they're dealing with. And then you're spending your whole lifetime unraveling that and orienting towards, or hopefully orienting towards, you know, wiser elders and that kind of thing. But I would say for the most part, we don't even know that that's what we need. It's too easy to get medicated for sleep. It's too easy to get medications for anxiety and depression and things that have come through these long lines as like a mainstream narrative, rather than, you know, someone really holding you and saying like, you can elderhood or wisdom or normalizing, right? It's like a totally different paradigm. And not to blame Medicaid. It's not anything about pharmaceuticals or labels. It's just like a totally different way of caring for one another. When we listen to the stories of the pain and it starts to come to life. In my own experience, just with you and being in your circle, and, you know, you'll share with everybody at the end all these wonderful things you're doing that they can join, but like, it's just so transformative to mental health and well-being and energy and sustainability to kind of move forward when you're supported with that, like people listening and witnessing and caring for one another.
Yeah.
Because those earlier stages are so painful for so many of us, you know?
And I think that where we get stuck, which is one of the things you asked about, is let's just say that you had insecure childhood. So that would be secure attachment. And by the time you get into your teenage and all the hormones hit and all the sex stuff hits, then that gets unraveled too. So there's not safety until you're in your 20s.
Yeah.
So that puts your looping thoughts at about age 5, right? You actually haven't had we haven't had lines in our head for straightforwardness. Your generation and the generation after you, I think, are doing much better. And I think it's because of what you said, is that our generation could almost only pay attention to itself. You know, after Vietnam, which was our big, you know, we can change the world, then everything kind of went silent. And there wasn't an initiation for that group into a national story of help. There's lots of helpers, right? But we didn't until we got to the point that where we are now, where there's a dissolution of helpers. So we have to come back developmentally to what would it have been like at 13? What did you need? You know, where were you lost?
Right.
And all of us needed someone telling us about our souls.
Yeah.
That we had them, because we all do it. Every kid knows they have it. It just gets buried. It's that little light, you know.
Yeah, talk about souls and your soul's like journey and relationship. Like, I think people would be really interested in that.
Well, I'm in a the way I look at me is that I had fairly insecure attachment in a healthy family, right? So I had a pretty interesting family. They were pretty, I can go back and see some real stability there, big family. But my particular journey in the family was as a runt, right? I was fifth child of in 4 years for my mom. So in my work, that's called a depleted womb, right? So there's not wasn't enough for me.
Mm.
And so regardless of how wonderful my upbringing good parts were, I didn't get what I needed in some really significant ways. And I was smart, and a lot of girls are smart. And so being smart and poorly attached at 13, I had a nervous breakdown, and I just I did not do well, and was sent off to school, went to jail. I mean, I have a whole bad things happened. And so that didn't really stop till late teenage. And if I were going to look at an initiation that would have helped me, it would have been at 13 with a group of, for me, a group of artists, a group of teachers, a group of Jewish women, a group, any group
Right.
that would have sat me down and helped me notice that being a whole human was my goal, not being the object of the men in my life, which was what I spent the next 20 years juggling, very bad, poorly attached relationships with men and a fierce commitment to my career. But none of that was, that's not peace. That wasn't peaceful. So those are two initiation points I see as really important, is that coming to terms at 13 with what your upbringing was, starting earlier at that, so that by the time I'm 21, I'm ready for the next thing, which is to be an equal partner in the world. And for women, and I've been working with women for 40 years, it is still part of our journey to say, I am not an object, right? I mean, it takes a really long time. And to get the men in our lives also, who are also been inculcated in that, to stop seeing us as objects. So that's the first journey of the soul, right? I am not an object. I'm a subject of my own life. Therefore, I can take responsibility. Therefore, I am not a victim. Therefore, I have to own some of my choices. So 13, 21, 40. So 21 to 40 is all of the things you guys already know, is all of that balancing between being an object, being a good object, getting the currency that women get from being an object, and then trying to find ourselves as subjects. What do I want to do? What kind of children do I want to raise? What is my career? How do I blah, 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 blah. Most women, not most, a lot of women waiting till later to choose children. They want more time for this developmental stage. And 40, it gets serious, because if you didn't have the help, and it's expensive to get help. It's not like, unless you're church oriented, temple oriented, or, in a remarkable community, you're pretty much left to hoping you can afford psychotherapy. And that now there's more and more women's circles. There's the Man Project. I mean, there's a lot more like what you do.
Yeah.
Thank God. When I was your age, I was, calling circles, but that I had to do it because I couldn't find them.
Yeah.
So at each developmental stage, community would have been better. One of the most successful secular human achievements of this century, I think, is AA. Because look what they've done.
Yeah.
It's about community. It's about daily support. It's about, better habits. It's about compassion and no judgment. And it's multi-million people for free. And I don't think there's ever been anything like that. So that's as close to me as a tribal life as I've ever seen.
Well, I think what I'm thinking about too is just all of the intersectionality around religion and soul and spirituality and soul and religion. And I'm thinking of a number of women in our community who, grew up in Catholic. Typically it's Catholic is what they'd say. Sometimes it's Jewish too, because we have a lot of similarities in the patriarchy, in the this doesn't make sense to me, in the hypocrisy. I know that's when I got fed up with Judaism, when I was so tired of hearing about changing the world. And yet it cost, $200,000 to belong to the synagogue. I mean, just ridiculous amounts of money pouring into enough. And God always being male. And I wasn't introduced to Shekinah or the feminine form until I navigated Kabbalah and renewal and all that, was able to find other paths. And I think I hear that in Catholicism too, is it was so non-relatable to some of our members that they just shut the whole door, and it feels really scary to open it back up because there is so much trauma related to sinning, doing things wrong, getting your hands tied, just so many things. So I just think it's important to kind of name and talk into that intersectionality of patriarchy with the suffocation of women and our souls in some ways, because I don't know where you find that outside of religion in modern, that's what we're trying to do in Lola, but in sort of modern mainstream society.
I know. I'm part of a tradition of healing schools that starts way back to John Parakis and bioenergetics, through Barbara Brennan, through, the schools that we've been with all over the world. They're all over the world, but they're small. And they're basically focused on, what is the energy of growing a soul? But that's not a common story. I think, it's interesting because my kids are Mormon, and one set of my kids are Mormon, and they, regardless of where our differences are about faith, in terms of community, they have it nailed. They really do a good job with those kids feeling like they understand what ethics are. They understand what they're, what it means to be a good person, what it means to be a grown-up. It's neat. That part's really neat to watch. I see that in the best of, Judaism. I'm not Catholic. My husband was. I'm expecting that they have that too. That there's a strong sense of ethical, which in an assimilated culture without any of that, it's quite disturbing. And I think that I could make this up, that's part of what we're seeing now.
Yeah. And a return to it, right? Like I think my AU students, my undergrad students are much more tuned into appropriation, land acknowledgements, indigenous communities, ritual. Like I'm hearing it all the time from, those younger. So I feel excited about that, even though we're sort of like, straddling.
Yeah. And, in terms of that, what I find exciting, and I love this about you, is like the most luminous conversations about faith I have are with, like, one of my closest friends is a Baptist pastor. And when we talk about what Jesus was Jewish and what is that, where's our link together, it opens into everything. It's everything. I think those conversations have been hard to have too. We're just learning that. I think we're really still very adolescent, aren't we?
Well, that's what I want to, is there anything else you skipped over adolescence a little to say it was different? Is there anything you want to say about that stage, or?
I do, because I think what I'm watching now, of course, I'm a counselor that is constantly seeing people who are hurting. So I don't know how normal I am. But what I see mostly now is extreme forms of anxiety for kids. And, COVID, of course, is its own hell realm. But even before that. So once again, without an attachment, without a community, without a place to ground, without a future that's safe, your nervous system is just not, nobody's nervous system is going to do well with that. And so it's a struggle now to find communities again. I mean, it's everywhere I look also, because I'm part of a community of communities. People are trying to create community, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
Because we don't have much practice and we're very egoistic. So we want what we want, and we're not collaborative by nature as Americans. We're, alone in the prairie, unless we're traditional people, which a lot of us aren't. So we can hope for that, but we don't actually have much epigenetic for it. We don't have sitting around the fire together. Yeah, I mean, in my story, my dad's Jewish family was annihilated, so they assimilated like nobody's business. Like nobody's gonna see me, kill me.
Yeah.
On my mom's side, they were pioneer, and from them we got much more evenings where everyone recited poetry and family events where we all went camping, and they were able to, that pioneer thing that they brought through, because they had to. If you didn't make community out there, you died.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here we are in our kind of quasi city, suburban, trying to be traditional people when we're not, trying to find home. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been so helpful to link the ancestral piece, which has come through with our work and then led me down like so many ancestral healing paths, which are just been wonderful for soul work. Like I would never 5 years ago have connected. I wouldn't have been able to see how those were connected. And now I just like feel it pulsating. I'm like, people are like, how is ancestral healing connected to your soul work? I'm like, how is it not?
Right.
But that took again, I said 5 years ago, not like 5 minutes ago. So this process of being curious about ancestry and how it's living through me in the lineage or in the face of my ancestors. Like one of my teachers always says that, like, you are the face of your ancestors. So honor it. You are the temple of your ancestors. I'm like, oh, that's like a lot more dignity I have to hold than just, little old like American child of the 80s. Like that's a really different energy than holding Fanchon Hartman title. I mean, Fanchon Hartman title, what a name. Like she's in me. So it feels so much more empowering to bring them along for the ride. It feels much more connected to soul, like bigger consciousness. And I will also say it's been so helpful in that in my lineages, there's definitely witchy women who've been gathering women for all of time. And now I'm starting to have a lot of like memories and dreams of villages in Egypt and, dances and things are coming to me that I'm making little altars in the earth. And I'm like, I've done this before. I know how to do this. And so there's like also this like lived experience that's been really fun to play with. That's not about like, to-do lists or productivity or like what is that book? Getting stuff done, GT, whatever. It's like a productivity book, which I love and has been really great to get me here. But now it's like more interesting to embody lineages that connect to soul. It's making this sort of like life thing much more fun and interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And all of the things that create awe.
Yes.
We haven't made time for a lot of that.
Yeah.
And so now, okay, so without any judgment of our past, that's where we are now. We're, apparently 50 years from, destroying the planet. So hello? I love that you're trying to really figure out what is the sustainable interior story that we can bring to the outside, rather than what is the outside telling us, right? So if we're going to be externally validated, that's only going to take us so far, but we can validate the external. Like I can say my home is almost completely off the grid working. I can say I dug up my lawn to build, to grow a garden. I can take my soul's understanding and be kinder to people on the bus. I can do all of that inner to outer. And I think that's where this next group of women needs to be working. I think women have to be running the world. And I do. I think that right now whatever it was that made it possible for us to be cooperative. And maybe it was because we were marginalized that we came together, right? That we have in a weird way, we have this common emotional language that, in my experience, has nothing to do with race at all, or it's just, and even people who are more gender fluid can do both languages. And I think that's where we are. It's like we have to be at the language of urgent soul, of fierce soul.
Yeah.
And we didn't train for it. So the training that we've gotten so far is good. And now we just have to up it.
Elements. Be in relationship with the elements. Ayurveda. That's why I love it. Just because even just sitting with a fire, it's like, and I'm like, I am you, you are me. And then all of a sudden I'm like, get up, girl, go get stuff done. I'm like, okay, like, it's like, it's feeding me.
Yeah. Right.
When I'm like, or the opposite. If I'm like, whoa, I'm too heated inside. I'm too short. I'm too like critical. I'm like, I'll hear like, go take a bath, go take a shower, like go water, like, so beautiful.
Yeah, so listen to the markers. That's beautiful for your community. Listen to Pleasance's markers. These are soul markers, right? That you're using your Ayurvedic map to help your soul right itself. And that for me is, if my soul is in alignment with something bigger than myself, which is the trick for this narcissistic story, right? Is the alignment. And if it's aligned bigger than that, I will break through the narcissism, because I'm not going to be thinking that way. It's really a true 360. It's like, I'm in alignment with love. So if that's my alignment, then whatever comes out of that is not fraught with anxiety, because it's me and this greater awareness working together. It's like I'm in service immediately.
I mean, which is just like so much more trusting and harmonious. And there's always rest, right? Like that alignment and love will lead you to rest when you need to rest, and sort of work when you need to work, and guide you to play. It's all of it is really encapsulated. And it's like, oh, you mean I don't have to carry all of that? Like,
yeah.
Oh, it's just so much more joyful to not have to be the I, and to really live in the we.
But in terms of developmental theory, this is where a lot of people get stuck. I'm glad you said this. So this is the Ken Wilber stuff. So once you can't get to the we without having a really solid I, because you have to bring yourself somewhere, right? And what Ken Wilber said, which I really loved, is he said that before language, which they call pre-egoic, right? We exist in kind of a state of universal oneness. And that's the mommy me, right? Everything, of course, you and I don't have that, but we're supposed to. Like, it's the wonderfulness of spirit is not broken. And then as we get language and it go out in the world, it breaks, and we develop our egos, which we need to pay our bills and do our work and blah, blah, blah. And then when we get to a little bit fuller with that, and we start to feel this bigger thing, right? Spirit, we bring everything that we've developed to that. You never leave anything behind that you've learned.
Yeah.
But a lot of my clients went straight from thinking they were in oceanic oneness to thinking they were in oneness with God. And they don't have any savings accounts. They're living in trailers. They're waiting for someone else to help them. They're assuming that someone else will learn to do the spreadsheets. Whatever that is, we call that spiritual bypass, right? We're not walking the whole developmental story. So I love that you said the we is much stronger than the I, but the we has to be made up of the I's.
Yeah. Oh. And what are some things to do get to a healthy I? Like I can imagine someone's listening and they're like, that sounds wonderful. Now, WTF do I do?
You're all doing great, because what you're going to do is just look at, it's a really fun thing. Maybe you guys can even do this. If you do a timeline for yourselves, you can not just we do it for trauma work, but you can do it for development. And then you'll see where your developmental holes are, right? And
Yeah.
my developmental hole has to do, I'll give you a good example, with math. So a lot of girls are really good in math, just like boys are. Like there's lots of good girls in math. And usually at about 10, girls start giving up that capacity to do well in math because they're told that the boys, that's the boys and we're the girls. And part of that's, part of that we come out with estrogen. That's okay, but it's great. But there's an actual damage point there where social life takes over intellectual life right around 10, 11, 12. There's actually a name for that, math panic. So I was in the 99th percentile in math. And I was taken out of school to go to a special program at Stanford for little kids where they taught us base 10, which is what your kids are learning now. In the meantime, everyone else was doing multiplication and division. And I came back into class and I still cannot multiply past the 5 times table. I'm 67. So that's a real gap in me that makes me weak. It makes me not strong. I've had to learn how to run a budget, do a spreadsheet, keep a budget, pay attention to our life together.
Yeah.
I'm very bad at it. My husband was a CPA, so it's really easy for me to become underdeveloped there. And I'm going to bet if all of your people in your circles look at where am I actually undeveloped? Can you change a car tire? I mean, they're stupid stuff, but they're really, really helpful. Are you afraid, like I am, to walk alone in the woods because of sexual trauma? Have you been able to hold a job that can actually pay your way? If your partner dropped dead, do you know what to do? If you are living at subsistence, do you have any ideas how to call in some help? Right? Like those are all egoic functions to be able to take care of oneself in the world.
So developing those skills.
Yeah.
It seems simple and kind of like, I don't want to learn how to change a tire.
I don't want to do my taxes. Right? Yeah. But I think one of the things that we've done in our circles, and this will be fun too, is we've done a bunch of things. But 2 things that really were great. We took an all women's canoe trip down the San Juan River, canyons of Utah. And we got down there and we were all like, we got this and our little, and we had massive wind the entire time. And our trip became a trip about survival. And it was really spooky for all of us to see how ill prepared we were.
Yeah.
Emotionally.
Yeah.
We actually did fine. But the reason we did fine, half the group worked really hard and the other half thought they were still on the trip that they'd paid for. And they never changed their expectation. Right? So that's a level of egoic development that you can force.
It's bringing up a lot. Like my stomach is bubbling and I'm feeling like all of the activation of just like, I don't need that. I don't want to. Like, I think all my bypassy parts, right? Yeah. If we go into IFS now, like we'll just use a whole nother, like this one part is feeling protective, upset, annoyed.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't want to. So it's very interesting. And then underneath that, I heard kind of like a giggle, like a wise, it wasn't a giggle. It was like a wise, like kind of nod of like, here's an edge, like an invitation for future adventure / learning in those realms. But the first one to arise was definitely the protector of like, hell no, we're not doing that. And then underneath was like, yes, you are.
Yeah. Another one that we did that was really breakthrough is we did full force fighting. And I've done that 3 times now. And that broke the image of women are not strong enough to really take down a man. And boy, did that help me. And even I fought last year at 66. So it was like, I needed to know that my body would not freeze. So that's a developmental phase for me. I was raped when I was young. So my first body response is freezing. And I've been every 10 years, I'll fight so that I can remember the muscle memory that says, I have agency. I am not an object. I am the subject of my life. I have to take care of me. Doesn't mean I don't lean on my husband for lots and lots of stuff.
Yeah.
But he leans on me too.
Yeah, right.
Show up as an adult in those places.
Right. That energy. Yeah. That feels so beautiful as an aspiration, and so many interesting things to sort of play with and examine within that. I think I did a training a few years ago for the Center for Mind Body Medicine on mind body skills groups, and one of our activities is for I can't remember if it's 5 or 10 minutes, but you yell in someone's face, no. And like, everyone is starting like, no. And by the end, there's just sobbing.
Yeah.
No. Everything, that little voice just gets louder. And then all the times you wish you would have had that strength.
Yeah.
It's one of the most like profound. And then after, here's how I know that I'm good with intensity, but not intimacy. I did it. I was bawling, and I had a partner who came towards me, and I had to turn around and walk out of the room. I couldn't be held by her. I couldn't be seen by her. I just was like, I need to get out of here because I feel so like, and she was just welcoming me, but I couldn't receive her love, and kindness.
Beautiful example. Yeah. And there's something that you learned that was successful for a long time. And that maybe there's some longing to be able to be held on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yes, that's part of what you're teaching me, receiving.
Yeah, but I'm just like you. It's hard to let people touch me.
Yeah. And as long as I go in, again, like if I'm in control of it, I'm okay with it. I'm like, I'm a hugger. Let me come at you. But if you come to me, I recoil. I have that response.
Yeah. So there's our story, living in our adult life.
Yeah.
Bringing soul and consciousness to it. Right.
I want to talk to you for 500 more hours, and I'm respectful of your time. Will you come back at some point? I would love it. And I want you also share with everyone some of the things that you're doing this winter and spring. I'll put a link to your website.
Okay. Well, one of the ones I think that two of them, one's already started. So the other, we're doing a women's retreat, and it's going to be online because we usually do them in person, but we're designing it as a sacred weekend. So you'll be setting up altars in your homes. And the thing that's really exciting to me is that it's with two women who the head of it's called Vital Cycles, which is about regenerating the earth and using permaculture principles.
Yes.
And then Dr. Judith Schmidt, who is a lifetime liver of synchronicity and dreaming. That's what she teaches. That's how she lives. That's how I live with her.
Yes.
And so we're putting all of us together to see how to get the insights, which we're all been working on, into this 50 years that really needs us to have some outside. So as someone who has in the past been a killer of plants, I have had to look at what is the part of me that was unable to be an interbeing with the natural world. I love it. I've spent a lot of time out there, but it has not been integrated into my soul story enough to even notice the plants are dying. What's that about? So that was kind of the call to the weekend. And I took this year-long permaculture class, and I was so stunned by what I didn't know about how humans and plants are the same at such a profound level that even emotionally plants are the same. that I wanted to bring women together because I think it's our natural habitat.
Mhm.
And if it's true, we're all going to, and I really almost believe this, we're going to need to grow gardens.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of from that point of view, is that we're going to
Yeah.
need to learn this. So just like we need to learn to change a tire,
Yeah.
come learn this in a sacred space.
Yeah.
You know, with beautiful poetry and lots of time alone. You're going to get a little sacred pouch in the mail, and it's, you know,
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm signed up. I'm coming. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
signing it. So that's happening. And then one other one that your women may be interested in starts in February. It's a once a week for 6 weeks with my friend Sandra in Canada. We're downloading everything that we know as therapists about development and sex. So we're doing a whole 6 weeks on sexual theory, how people are educated about sex, what's going wrong, what would make that right. A lot of what's taboo, you know, how do you look at what's taboo? How were you trained sexually? How is it? A lot of women are sexually anorexic. They just don't want to have sex.
Mhm.
And then the other half seem to be, you know, bunnies. So somewhere in the middle is freedom.
Mhm. All of it. So good. I want all of it. I want to do all of it.
Really excited for you and for the leadership that you carry. It's really stunning and beautiful. And I love how you're always bringing new things in. It's inspiring to me.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. I feel like you really, I just, like I said earlier, really profoundly affirmed and validated the sort of callings and the longings that I've always wanted to fully embrace. And now with your support and teachings, like, and guidance, I've been able to really step fully into that in a way that just, again, doesn't feel fake or bypassy or weird. I don't have to be like enlightened, or I can be human. And that feels really good because that wasn't really like a thing in the yoga tradition. You weren't really allowed to be that. You know, there's just so many layers to sort of like the humanness that's been really fun and pleasurable. And I'm here for it. Like Haneni, like here for, you know, any of the pleasure that also includes rest and honesty. Just,
Yay.
that's it.
Yay.
Right? In the great love, with the great love, always.
Always.
You're the best. Love you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Soon.
Bye.
Bye.